Women Who Serve. Today, our panelists include Diana Danis. She is a U.S. Army veteran and a national advocate and activist on women veterans issues, also and a lead administrator of social media service, Women Who Serve. Also, we have Lucy Del Guido. She is a U.S. Army veteran advocate, New Jersey co-chair, New Jersey SOS, veterans stakeholder, Women Veterans Subcommittee. Also, we have Kimberly Bailey, medical social worker, founder, CEO of Invisible Combat, former combat medic, and a U.S. Army sociologist. As busy as these three panelists are, I don't know even how they have time to stop and talk. But we have an audio clip that we want to go to, and it's from ABC World News about the death of Vanessa. And the discussion today is going to be justice for Vanessa.
The family that Army soldier Vanessa Guillen, who went missing from Fort Hood, saying the Army has officially identified her remains now. And it comes as a suspect in the case appeared in federal court. Here's Stephanie Ramos.
Today, the suspect accused of helping the killer of Fort Hood Army soldier Vanessa Guillen facing a judge in Texas. Cecily Aguilar, charged with conspiracy to tamper with evidence. Authorities alleging she admitted to helping her boyfriend, Aaron Robinson, dismember Guillen's body with a machete-type knife in April, after she says Robinson told her he'd bludgeoned Guillen with a hammer. She did not enter a plea.
How this happened at work, at the base, with thousands of people there, I think this will haunt everyone forever.
Tonight, an updated complaint with new disturbing details. Aguilar allegedly telling the FBI she and Robinson went back to where they disposed of Guillen's body to continue the process of breaking down the remains. Aguilar eventually cooperating with investigators, calling Robinson as they listened in. Robinson telling her, "Baby, they found pieces." The FBI saying Robinson killed himself Wednesday as they closed in on him.
David, a lecturer at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, is under fire for saying sexual harassment is the price of admission for women into the good old boy club. Betsy Scholler, who is also a retired National Guard colonel, says she was, quote, giving a voice to the messaging women here. She says she's saddened that her post was taken out of context.
Okay. We're back. That was such a disturbing story. But we'll start with Diana. Can you tell us a little bit more about this case and why it's so important for us to talk about it and to make sure that people understand what kind of an injustice was done here?
Yeah, it's glad to see you again, or talk to you again,
Yes,
see you on the radio. There are so many pieces to this. The depth is incredible. We have been dealing with these issues with sexual assault in the military for 40 years. I've been dealing for 40 years and trying to get laws passed. And a big part of it is we don't have mechanisms. We have what they call SHARP and SARC and SAPRO and all of that for assistance to victims if they come forward on the various military installations. But we don't have the kinds of protections in place that would be there in advance of the next steps, where if they're very nervous, like Vanessa was in this case, about telling someone up her chain of command that she was being harassed in her workplace. She did not trust that immediate chain with that information. That's a red herring. It's terrible because what happens is people say, well, if we had more places for them to report, if we had a place for them to go on post, it would be better. But people can see you. They can see you moving around. The truth of the matter is there are two things, and then we can get in depth with both Kimberly and Lucy about Lucy with the media aspect and the larger arena, and with Kimberly about the mental health things that are coming about as a combination of both the COVID-19 and the mental health of people who've been assaulted in the military. So where I will tell you first and foremost is all reporting and a whole line of things, a whole litany, whether it's the reporting, investigation, and all of that needs to be outside the military. Now, I am very radical in that view. A lot of people I'm working with right now are believing in some things that aren't quite that radical. I've been doing it for a long time. I think all of it should go out of the military, and it has with all of our international partners, because they figured it out a while ago that you can't trust, the fox with the hen house. And so they don't want to have that within the ranks and the confines of their militaries anymore. I agree with that posture. The second thing is taking the DNA that we grab up on every person that goes in the military today and cross-referencing it with the national quota system that's used by all of our law enforcement entities from, CID, FBI, local law enforcement, state, everybody uses CODIS. And if we could cross-match those DNA, I think we would find thousands of predators, both in the military and those interested in going in, and it would stop a lot of that. So I think that it would be really good at this point to just ask Kimberly what she thinks about what's happening in terms of mental health, because that's a big deal right now.
Okay, Kimberly. Yeah, let's tell us a little bit about the mental health aspects of this and how you see this playing out, and what some of the issues that Vanessa probably was facing being in that kind of situation.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, first of all, and thank you, Diana. Yeah, definitely military sexual trauma and harassment in the ranks plays a significant role in mental health, overall mental health. I think Vanessa in the situation, because like Diana was mentioning, retaliation or fear of retaliation can create a lot of anxiety. So I'm sure she was feeling just an absurd amount of anxiety, especially because she went to her family to tell them she was, afraid of reporting this individual. So that, of course, probably put a huge amount of, issues on her mental health and well-being. But just with survivors of military sexual trauma currently, with all of the media that's been talking about some of the significant issues around the case, or some of the, the brutal, details of her case, I've seen an upsurge in, mental health issues or challenges, I would say, maybe re-traumatization for a lot of our survivors, because they can see themselves in her story. And, the ones that survived and were able to live, after a sexual trauma in the military or sexual harassment, they're able to see themselves in that story. And so I think it's definitely almost like a mental health crisis, I want to say, for a lot of sexual assault survivors. And they're kind of just re-experiencing their own worst nightmares right now.
Yes. So to sort of relive those kinds of things, those same kind of traumas.
Exactly.
Yeah, and in this whole scenario, do you think the mental health aspects of it, it could have been eased in a situation if she had an effective chain of command? I'm not sure of how far she went with the information and who she spoke to, but if people were aware that something was going on, I really haven't heard much being spoken about that particular aspect of this whole issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having, trust in your chain of command is really key. And I think there was completely a mistrust. She didn't feel comfortable. She didn't feel safe to report right away. So I think, with mental health, it's really important to have supportive networks and to feel like you have a safe space to disclose this information. And if you don't have a safe space, it can be really detrimental on, your mental health and just overall health specifically, and also just the morale of the unit. I feel was probably deeply affected.
Yes, that's absolutely an excellent point. And, we were talking about these mental health things, and I'm wondering, how is this perceived, Lucy, in the media sphere? How does this sort of, do you think that the media, that the reactions that we're seeing to these issues from people who are in the community, from other veterans, they matter? How should that be portrayed in the media?
Well, right now, I think the media, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be on the show. I'm very honored. But first of all, I think the media is not doing it justice. I think there's pockets of the country that are really doing their due diligence when it comes to investing in this story. You have the Texas market, you have the California market that are really being aggressive with it. And then, like, for instance, I'm in the Northeast. It's really not spoken of. And I think we have to do a better job in the Latino market. You know, Vanessa's attorney has not really played a role in having the interviews in the Latino market because she doesn't speak the language. And I think that's a lack of, that's a concern for me because, again, not that we're making it a Latina issue because it's really, truly a injustice racially, but the Latino public has to be very knowledgeable of what happens because we are such a strong unit of women that go into the military to seek prosperity, to seek better lives, to better ourselves. And the Latino market needs to be heard. And again, focusing on that, the social media aspect has been really good. That, I have to say, has been I can't tell you how aggressive we've gone in the social media platforms. But when it comes to visual media, to the news channels, we have to do a better job when it comes to every outlet, you know, have a nationwide aspect of it. And we really need to dive into the Latino community, to Latino TV media outlets.
Okay. Very good.
And this is Diana. I wanted to just kind of piggyback on that a little bit. When people are getting murdered on our military installations, and I wanted to let you know that Sherman Gillums is watching today, or listening today, and he has done some incredible video about why it's so important for the command structure to listen and how all of this is their fault. That if they were doing their jobs, this wouldn't have happened. And he has been incredible with this. And I think that we need a lot more men. We need all of our people of color. We need all of our white communities to get on board and say, hey, it's not a Latino woman. It's a woman. It could be a man. There was a young man found 30 feet from where her body was found, and they had listed him as AWOL. We're doing a terrible job taking care of our people on military installations worldwide. This kind of stuff is happening all over the world. That's, of course, why I want to take it completely away from the military for reporting, because I don't trust them. I don't trust them because they've had 40 years since they knew about this specifically in Congress. And, you know, Lucy is out there. And, Lucy, I would like you to talk a little bit about some of the both conservative and more liberal media that you're talking to, because the Hispanic community is very broad-stroked on its politics. And I think people forget about that, if you could address that.
Sure. So, again, you know, the social media pockets, we've covered every aspect, trying to get our influencers, trying to get anybody that's going to bring some light to it. But we also had, like, we took a deep dive, and I did an interview with Breitbart. Now, again, one of the most conservative outlets that you can possibly go into, but they wanted to listen to us. They took our story. It's really had some fantastic momentum with that conservative, because the Latino community in Hall, and especially I'm Cuban, and we're a very conservative group of individuals. And again, to bring it to that conservative market, to bring it to the ultra, to everybody. You know, we try. To me, it was about being as nonpartisan as possible, because everybody needed to hear the story. Again, the lack of accountability that they had when it came to this. You know, all of us have had this conversation. When a weapon goes missing on a military installation, everybody gets shut down, nobody's allowed to go home, and we have to search and destroy for that weapon. Here's a young lady whose articles were left in her workplace, and they didn't look for her. They weren't aggressive about it. They treated her like she was nothing, and now she's dead. And that is the lack of accountability, the lack of structure that the military has to recognize that they are really doing a poor job. Again, the amount of inconsistencies, the amount of malices, the amount of toxicity that has been plagued in Fort Hood needs to be really looked at and really addressed.
And this would be the other thing I would say is, when we have something where we have a pandemic, and we have all of the young men and women around this country and around this world that have been assaulted in the military, sexually assaulted. We have a lot of men. And we have all of them reliving their assaults right now. They're watching and they're seeing, is the military, is Congress, who is going to stand up and protect me? Who's going to stand up and protect if I decide to send my children to the military? And that's part of what the family wants right now. They don't want anybody to enlist until the military starts addressing this. They want Fort Hood burned to the ground. And frankly, if my daughter was murdered there, I'd want the damn place shut down too. But what I will say is that Kim is putting together, we have a national network that's working on all of this, grassroots, bunch of groups, bunch of individuals from all over the country working together, being led by Kristen Rouse and Pam Campos Palma, doing an amazing job. She was on with Kimberly on MSNBC earlier today. And I think that it's really important to look at how our folks are doing with their mental health and some options available to them, because people are kind of freaking out right now. Could you look at that, Kim, real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I completely agree with everything that you were saying, both of you. But yeah, the pandemic, we just got through COVID-19. We're still going through that. And that right there already impacted so many of our mental health. And then we had the other issues like racial tension and things like that. And then all of a sudden you have this. And for a lot of military sexual trauma survivors, that's a lot to take on, even if your trauma was several years ago. Sometimes the healing journey, we know, is not a linear journey. And so, yes, I felt like the moment that we started talking about this case, and I've been talking about this case for a while now since she's been missing, but the moment that people realized that she, was no longer here, she had passed away, that's when I think a national mental health crisis kind of started to surface. We've seen people from all over the communities, even people who are not military members, that maybe just have had sexual trauma or have been harassed as a woman, are just having a bunch of different conflicting feelings in their mental health. We see a lot of grief. People are grieving over the loss of, Vanessa, and also just over the loss of, maybe themselves, if they had a sexual trauma happen to them. That also has a moment of grieving for the loss of yourself. So we have seen a lot of upsurge in mental health needs. And so, I have a volunteer team of mental health professionals who are working to get some support groups out to people, some military support groups, some veteran support groups. We think it's really important to have some bilingual. We have some Spanish-speaking mental health therapists who are going to be doing some peer-facilitated groups for people.
That, because that's really important. People need to know. And there's a group on Facebook called Invisible Combat that Kim has folks working on, and if you need to see something immediately on that, that's a good place to go. Lucy is also going to be continuing to do media, and there's going to be a march in Washington, D.C. on July 30th. This is really critical to get everybody out we can. The family will be there. We're looking at, within the next few days, starting to get legislation presented and put together toward that end. And again, my radical idea and their idea, not quite as radical, but I think some of you know me well enough to know now I'm going to go with the far, let's get something done, because I believe if you make a whole lot of noise and you ask for the moon, you have a better chance of getting something done. And so the 30th is a real good opportunity to get something handled and to join in. And Lucy's going to continue to do stuff, but I would encourage people to participate in that. And there is a group that Kim has also that is, people can sign up. You can go to Service Women Who Serve. That's my group, and check on there. We're putting things up in our announcements where people can know where to go if they want to volunteer, they want to participate. But I would encourage Lucy and Kim, each one of you, to just talk a minute about what your next steps are with the national effort and where you'd like to see it to go. And also, I do want people to realize that sexism, assault, harassment, and rape are all about power and control. It is the same thing as racism. It's about power and control. And when people try to run your life, they're doing it because it's a way to control you. And so these things are intersectional. So Lucy or Kim, whichever one of you wants to take the lead on that answer.
Sure. Kim, is it okay if I step in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right now,
I'll go next.
we need to get the point across. We need everybody as an ally to push out social media. Anything that you could do to afford this story to continue a momentum, we need everybody to put it out there. So, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, any type of social media platform that you had, keep the story going. Keep it going in any walks of life, in any avenue. We need the discussion to go on. Also, as women veterans, as women service members, as organizational support, we have our call to action. If you want to align with us and you want to help us, we do have a letter for signature. It's available online. It's on Bitly. So if you go to bit.ly/Justice for Vanessa.
Oh, great.
I'm sorry, I'm going crazy right now. For Vanessa Gilliam, please, by all means, and I'm saying it in the non-Latino way, so you could get the correct spelling.
Okay.
Please, by all means, everybody, if you
Okay,
are a veteran, or if you are an active servicewoman right now, sign it.
Okay.
Please, by all means, because we need
Okay.
all the signatures we can get.
Excellent.